as well, like looking at certain habitats, certain tracks, and all these animal activities that I could recognize, and I let them know, like even the smallest things, I let them know if this is the track of so and so, and this is the animal, and they would recognize that, and they'd stop, and they wouldn't say, look, it's a deer. No, look, it's a moose. What kind of moose? It's a bull moose. How do you know? It's pointed. And if it's a cow, it's not pointed. That type of thing. So to me, land back is leaving that behind, and not to worry at all for anybody coming up to us and saying, what are you doing? There was a couple of instances where the CO and the RCMP came up. The only thing that was happening was their FAL, whatever it is, that they were worried about. I didn't even pay attention to that. They took care of it. I just keep focused on what I'm doing. I know for a fact that my father, when he was doing what I'm doing to them young people, he was focused. He was focused on the teachings. He was focused on what he was going to leave behind, and that is what he taught me. And that's exactly what I'm doing to the young people. Like I said, it's not just the work itself, but it's what I'm telling the young people and describing the work, and at the same time describing my past life as a young person, and I never miss. I always say this. Oh man, yeah, I feel like I'm 64 now. Hey, wait a minute, I am 64. And now this year it's 65. So that to me is land back.
Thank you, Was. Slato, I wonder if you could explain your relationship to Was and your thoughts on land back, what it means to you.
Can I just talk from here and it'll go? Yes. Denise, Takase, Skyze, Sai Slato, Sydney. I hold the name Slato. It's wing chief name in Cassia, which is the grizzly bear house, and Was is our house chief, the head chief of Cassia. And land back to me goes back to partly my education and where I was at when this first kind of all started happening for me. And one of the things that happened was that there was a series of meetings in 2000 that started off in 2009 in the Wet'suwet'en Nation. And at the time I was in university in Victoria, I did a master's degree in Indigenous governance. And so we were learning about colonization and decolonization all over the world, and things that were Indigenous people were doing all over the globe, how to land back, how to free ourselves from this concept of Canada, to free ourselves of this concept that somebody else has jurisdiction and that somebody else has ownership over what our sovereign Indigenous lands. And through a series of meetings at the time, the Wet'suwet'en were talking about treaties. And it was actually at the Smogogam, one of our Denise, and Hanamuch, who were talking to the people about whether or not they would would want to sign on to a treaty. And they basically, through a series of clan meetings, everybody decided that we didn't need the government to tell us that we had jurisdiction and sovereignty over our territories. And that was a mindset shift for a lot of people, that we didn't need to go and we didn't need to get confirmation from the province of BC or Canada to say that we had jurisdiction, that we had rights, that we had anything, because that is inherent in Inuknuitan, in Wet'suwet'en laws that come directly from the land. And so through that process, I really wanted to come back and to learn more about what did that actually mean. And part of that process was me building a cabin out on the territory with my children and my ex-husband, and we built a home. And I was mentored by Timberwolf, who is one of the oldest matriarchs in Gidimt'en, and really taught about what it was that we had a responsibility to do. And it wasn't centered around rights, it was centered around the responsibility to be in relationship with the land, and that is what brings to life our Naknuatan. And that's what I've been doing for the last, gonna age myself here, but since I came home, my son's 14 now. So for the last 14 years, just having that relationship with the land, and what comes with that, and I heard the youth talking about this earlier, is that when you have that connection to the land and you know the animals and you know the plants in your territory and you know the water and you feel the power of your ancestors that have walked on that territory, then you automatically will defend it by any means necessary. You automatically know that you have a responsibility to uplift the ancestors who fought for that territory, to grow your community and grow the possibilities and the access for your people to have that same relationship with the land, because that is who we are. And so never questioning that we have jurisdiction to build homes, to build infrastructure, to build trap lines. We built one of the first feast halls on the Yinta in living memory. We built communities out there, and other clans have built communities on their territories as well. And that reoccupation is not only to control the access to the land and to control and to know, but to be able to make decisions about the land, because when you're out on the land every single day and that's your way of life, and you wake up to those animals and you wake up to those plants and the water every single day and go to sleep knowing and having that relationship with them, that's how you can make decisions about that land. That's how you're going to know how to sustain it for thousands of years to come, because that's what our ancestors did. And so I think that land back is really about a mindset of how we are functioning in the world and how we're going to control and set into motion the things that our children and our future grandchildren are going to need, that identity and belonging and connection to the land, that makes them whole and makes them strong. And I've always said that in this struggle, there's so many things. There's like multi-billion-dollar industries, there's governments, there's police, there's, lateral violence, there's all of these things that are trying to break us apart and make us weak. But when we are living with the land, the way that our ancestors did, then we're strong. Then we know our laws because we're actually living them out on the land. And I think that that's what it means to me, is that we aren't taking it back. We're upholding our Anaknuatan, we're upholding our laws and living out, breathing life into that way of life again. And I think that we've been really successful at creating the opportunities for more and more people to experience that. And I know so many people have come to the Yinta and have come to the land and seen and experienced that just for a little minute even. And then all of a sudden they're like, we're gonna move here. We're gonna move to the territory, or we're gonna move to the area, because that connection is just so strong, and they keep coming back and keep coming back. And I think that that's a really inspiring thing to also see other young people and the youth holding that up and carrying that on. Outside.
Thank you for that. A few weeks ago, some of us here had the opportunity to witness a feast that Cassia and Was held. And there was a lot that I didn't understand because I don't speak the language. But what I saw was you giving furs from that trap line that you built to the other Wet'suwet'en chiefs. And if I can come back to you for a minute, Was, can you explain what you said to your fellow Dinizé when you handed out those furs?
Sure. So for the past 2.5 years, we built the trap line, and then we set the traps, and all the animals that we caught, the marten, fishers, lynx, the wolverine, and a little bit of weasels. And and it's a learning process for the young people too. They know how to skin the animals, treat it with respect, and put it on a stretcher and turn it outside out again. It's a process. So they learned all of that in 2.5 years. And during that process, when I got the name Was in 2019, it was supposed to be 1 year after that, getting that name. I was supposed to what they refer to as drying the blanket, which means it's more like reinforcing the name. And of course, the pandemic hit. It just stalled the whole thing. And then a lot of things happened in between that time. So 6 years later, I finally managed to do it on June 28th with all the furs that we put together, with the help of the young people, with the help of Slato's support network. We had a total of, I believe it was 72 martens, 2 wolverines, 3 lynx, and about 14 fishers altogether. And so part of the process was to lift up my name, and I had a new regalia done, so I had to pay for that at that time. But part of that means I'm reinforcing the name. So the furs that we put in between or in the center, it was mentioned that the 4 young people that were the ones that, and Molly's support network, were all mentioned that they were the ones who helped me. So for the martens and the bigger animals, like the lynx, went to the bigger chiefs. When the chiefs were going to be receiving the animals, I named the animals, where it was caught, and when the animal went to the chief, I mentioned that the land is touching you through this animal, and it just signifies that the land is still strong. It signifies that the land is still ours. And this is, I'm not saying this is proof, but here's the actual animal that came from this land. And so each chief got some furs, and the wing chiefs got furs, even the guests got furs, because there was more than enough to go around. And I don't think that it happened for a very long time, but it really did have that connection to the land, and that connection of the animals that we respect, that we catch. And in our legends, how the feast came about, those very animals are the ones that help us put our societal structure together. That's the meaning of those furs, and yeah, that's basically was a conclusion of that ceremony. But at the same time, it's a beginning of WAS for more legacies to put together. So that's how I can explain it.
Thank you for that. Dakota, I wanted to come to you next. You've got a different perspective. I'm hoping you can introduce yourself for folks that don't know you, and tell us what land back means from where you sit.
Thank you. I just wanted to first start by saying that I'm very grateful and honored to be here amongst the leadership, people of the land, the territory, far away from home, from Treaty 6, Saskatchewan. But it is truly an honor to be up here and just share some perspectives, some insights from some of the work that me and my wife been doing, my family. But I just wanted to introduce myself. Tansi, everybody. My name's Dakota Bear. My spirit name is Blue Thunder. I'm from Treaty 6 territory. I'm Nihia. I'm Cree. I currently reside on the unceded lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, and really grateful to be here. In terms of land back and what that means to me, I have a different perspective, I feel, because I grew up disconnected from the land. My grandmother actually was in residential school, and she ran away at 16, and she lives in Saskatoon growing up. That's where I grew up. And I didn't go to my reservation a lot for holidays and things like that, but not so much for cultural activities to get connected, to build that relationship with the land until I started to grow older, have my own children, and really walking the red road and being able to see for myself the effects and impacts of colonization and what it had done to my family, the cycles that had continued through the addictions and poverty that was very common growing up. And I could see that other young people struggling with that. And so being able to have clarity, to be able to think my own thoughts, to gain my spirit back, I think that was a huge part of it. And to rebuild the relationship with the land. I think going back to the land and seeing for yourself what it is we are protecting exactly, and what it is we are leaving behind for our children, the next 7 generations, and to truly feel that manifestation of the ancestors' prayers, which, you know, we carry on through the work that we do. And, you know, me and my wife, we have the clothing line Decolonial Clothing, and really an extension of who we are and our decolonial journey of being urban Indigenous youth, sharing those same struggles, you know, seeing family goes through addictions and poverties and things like that you don't completely understand, but you're in survival mode. So you don't see outside of that. You don't see what had caused all of these things to happen within your family. You're only experiencing it until you could start to get that clarity. You start to, you know, walk that road of sobriety and piece things together, you know. I really believe that we're not building anything new, but, you know, starting to go back and revert to ways that were already there predating colonialism, and picking up those tools left. And I really feel that ceremony and the land is the true key to healing, especially for young people. You see more and more wellness centers pop up that are on the land throughout Turtle Island, because of the importance of being able to connect back to it. And then there's just, you know, land back in general is the restitution of Indigenous lands back to Indigenous hands, to see that it only took such a such a short period of time through colonialism, 500 years or so, to really mess everything up. The world, the way that things are changing so quickly. And now Indigenous people only having such a small access, and where I'm from, the treaties were laid. We don't have that relationship as young people as to the land as much as we want to, like to have that access. And so I think most importantly, it's going back to the land, rebuilding that relationship to see what it is we are protecting, and then being able to conduct those spiritual activities that connect us closer to the land, connect us closer to our spirits, so then we can regain our spirits back, we can regain our language back. And for the ones that are struggling with the CFS, the child care system, we regain our children back, the lineage, the heritage that we had lost or that we feel that we had lost, so we can start to piece those things back together. And it's hard because, you know, as an urban person that, you know, has lived in the city most of my life, feeling that disconnect from the land, I could see how a lot of young people get lost and they don't understand what it is we are actually protecting, because they become so disconnected from it. And then shifting your perspective to be able to see that land back is going out to the forest and dropping tobacco and being able to speak to your ancestors. Land back is rebuilding that relationship that it was always there in your lineage to everything, that everything is interconnected. And then, of course, the restitution of lands back to indigenous nations so we can continue to rebuild the things and structures, the societies, the governance systems that were already in place before colonialism came and started to undo or damage some of those things that we lost. And that's what we teach. We use clothing as a platform, as a vehicle to drive these messages. And because we are young, we know that the influence that music and clothing has is so vast, and you can reach the youth with that. You can become influential with the platforms and speak their language. And now they're wondering what exactly land back means. So we educate them, through the platforms that we have. And then they can show up to the events, Turtle Island Festival, the different events and initiatives that are happening throughout the city. And then they make that connection. And I always feel like once your spirit is activated and once your eyes are open, you feel awake, there's no going back. And it's only getting stronger from that. And I feel like that's the ancestors' prayers being answered. And we're channeling that through the platforms and our voices, amplifying that. So that's what land back means to me.
I want to come back to, I'll come back to Slato. Earlier, you talked about not needing the mindset shift that happens when you realize you don't need the recognition of a colonial government. And we've seen these legal terms be adopted into policy by the province and by the feds. And one of those is free, prior, and informed consent. And they turn everything into buzzwords and acronyms. Now they just call it FPIC. Like, what is FPIC? I'm curious if you can reflect on what consent means through your own governance system, not through the interpretation of the province and their lawyers.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that, and I've said this before about, there's a lot of work that was put into UNDRIP. A lot of people did a lot of work for a lot of years, and we can't solve the problems that we have in the world by having cookie cutter approaches. So everybody's free, prior, informed consent needs to actually be what their laws are regarding access to territories. We already have our laws about accessing territories. We have trespass laws, we have sustainability laws, we have laws around our decision-making, and those already exist within our Nuknuatan. So those are the things that we assert because of our responsibility, that we don't, and we have to shift, like the shift in the mindset is that we don't have to use these terms and ways that other people have thought up for us. We need to actually breathe life into our own ways of doing it. And every Indigenous nation has those ways of doing free, prior, informed consent. And ours looks like knowing the land, knowing the animals that are on the land, the plants, knowing the health and the wellness of the land, each territory, and then making collective decisions about how something is going to be impacted by the decision that you're making. And that's something that our people have been doing for thousands and thousands of years, which is why we have such beautiful territories, and which is why we know what our responsibility is to defend that. And I think in terms of free, prior, and informed consent and the jurisdiction that we all hold and the responsibilities is to position ourselves to defend our responsibility to our lands. And so if we're talking about free, prior, informed consent, one thing that always gets missed is that we have to be able to defend our jurisdiction. There's, WAS has talked about it over and over, and it has been drilled into our heads that there's no nation, there's no sovereign nation in the world that cannot defend themselves. And so if we're talking about consent and our decision-making, and when we make a decision, how do we back up that decision? And we have to position ourselves on our lands so that we can enforce our decision-making.
Thank you. That's very succinct. I'm bouncing around here, but I want to come back to our colleague Sherry. There's a lot of Japanese Canadians at this event, and I don't think that's a total coincidence, but maybe Sherry, you could share your perspective and some of your reflections on what land back means to you and free, prior, and informed consent, if that fits.
Thanks, Kai. I don't know if you ever feel like a kid at the adult table, but my goodness, getting to be with these four superstars is quite a privilege. My name's Sherry Yano, and I'm so grateful to be here on these Gitxsan Nation territories. And I live on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. So a city girl, we don't really, I think I'm typical in that I would not at all know the difference between a moose, bull moose, or a cow. So huge respect for that kind of knowledge and passing it down and what that means. I guess there's a couple of things. There's so many things because I was listening to what you were saying and I was scribbling in my head kind of, but just Kai, your question about what's the coincidence? Why are there so many people of Japanese descent? Where we feel like so lucky to be called into this kind of gathering. And I think it is I know my uncles worked on redress and reparations, and we were just displaced as settlers off indigenous lands. And so you know for sure. And as funders or NGOs, I work now at the David Suzuki Foundation, but I used to work for 4 years at the Real Estate Foundation, so as a funder. And you realize, if you care about climate justice, or if you care about sustainable land use, then you care about dispossession of land. And you care about, what that means in terms of reparations and setting things right. And I guess I also want to really, I'm so grateful for what people have taught us as settlers, really taking the time to help us understand from their perspective. So folks on this panel, but so many of you out there who come to funders and try to explain, something that we don't readily understand. And what I've learned is that land back looks like so many different things because it's specific to people and it's specific to place. And people are going to be able to tell you what it means to them. And that's just, all you got to do is listen. How lucky is that? Because it can look like an IPCA, or it can look like a land use plan, or cultural site mapping, but it can also look like language revitalization and culture and trap lines. And it can look like youth, getting youth out on land, the Silcotin, getting back onto horses, youth onto horses and out on the land for a couple of weeks with elders and culture keepers and doing the cultural burn and learning all of that. And I would say it also, connecting with the land and asserting rights and title, something else that people have taught us is it can look like Team FAFO. Right? and it can look like this, the peace and unity, bringing people together. And we're so lucky if we get to fund that or be part of it, and to be part of the learning, and just to be part of the good things that can come from land back and from the addressing injustices, past and hopefully in future. An FPIC, did you want? Okay, yeah. I guess I just want to hold my hands up to Tara Marsden, who she worked with us for 3 or 4 years at the Real Estate Foundation. And she really, I know this is on the backs of labor of amazing Indigenous, leaders and thought leaders. But the transformation that she brought to our organization over those years by getting us to really understand, or, you know, as much as we could, the articles in UNDRIP, and then tell us, you're responsible for figuring out how to uphold that in your work in a meaningful way. And she just got us, you know, crowdsourcing, you know, like, what does that mean to you? And it transforms everything. Like, it's a really interesting, and I respect that, you know, you can't have the cookie cutter approach, but I think for settler organizations, it can take you a long way to have a really good framework and someone amazing like Tara to kind of force you to, not force you, but invite you to commit to short, medium, and long-term and transformative actions that you lay out in detail, and then to help walk you through delivering those. Like, I found the work that Tara Marsden did with us was absolutely transformational and led us to a lot of the relationships that you folks have kindly made with us and allowed us to share with other funders and things like that. So.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Sherry. And once again, I'll note there is a salmon barbecue coming up soon, which is the other reason that all the Japanese people are here in the crowd.
Of course.
Dakota, I wanted to go back to you for your thoughts on consent, free, prior, and informed consent. What does that mean to you? Not necessarily the government's definition, but how have you been thinking about that?
Well, I think where I'm from, with the treaties, it was almost like they had their own legal language to be able to bypass that consent. From my knowledge and learning about this throughout the few years that I've been able to really connect with myself and actually going back home, and my auntie and my uncle taking me back onto the land to see that the damage in real time that is happening through the resource extraction to the northern boreal forest. There was no consent to the indigenous people, the Nihia people that have been living off the land for hundreds of thousands of years. It was just like they were moving like at nighttime when no one could see them. And my auntie referenced, it's like how a thief would move. You go somewhere at night and then you take as much as you can and then you're gone. And I could see what she was saying as the lumber trucks and all of these things were happening at nighttime and going through the roads. And then coming to BC and starting to understand what unceded means and the work that is happening against the pipelines. And so all of this language that was being used was confusing to me. You know, I'm probably about 24, 25 at the time. Of all of these almost like government words that they would be putting out there that for a young person to even try to understand is very confusing. And then I was learning from YouTube videos, actually. I was watching these videos from Russ Diabo, and he was saying there's this term, it's called SWAT, like special words and tactics that the government uses against indigenous peoples, and I could see them kind of playing out in real time across Turtle Island when all it come to the resource extraction project. So at first, all of these things could be confusing as a young person because there's so many things that you want to try to understand that you really don't. And then it's like the more that you know, like the more that you don't know. And so for me, being able to see firsthand what it's like when no consent at all is happening and the damage is happening in real time, where the northern boreal forest, which is the lungs, you know, of the territory, and my traditional lands that I'm from is being taken, being destroyed for extraction, to exploit the land for greed. It really sparked something in me, being younger at that time, to feel like if I wasn't able to see this or connect with myself to contribute to this work, and went down the dark path of addictions and things, perpetuate those cycles, where would I be? Where would we be in terms of my children and what I had left for them in 10 years when things could look vastly different? And they look up to me and say, Dad, what were you doing at this time? I wouldn't have an answer for them. But fortunate enough that I was able to get connected back to those lands and see what was happening, to say that what we do and the actions that we have, even if they feel minimal or small, can have big domino and ripple effects that could go through generations. And for example, like my auntie, she was going to stop the logging that was happening in the lands, and I got to be able to go to that spot where she put up signage that said Treaty 6, no trespassing. And there was only a couple of them for a while, her, a younger nephew, and some family that were on there reoccupying that land, which was far from where they lived, and to be able to stop some of the work that was happening. And I think it was maybe a quarter or half a mile of northern boreal forest that they actually stopped the logging to. And it was from a small group of people reoccupying and taking that action, the steps that had those effects are going to last for generations to come. And so consent has to always be, approached in a way that is going to be with intention, not just here, these are those documents that we created from the government and we'll use them, when we need them. But like I said, fairly new in comparison to the panelists here that have been doing this work for a lifetime. And learning about this, but I'm honored to be able to soak in the knowledge and then being able to, from my best understanding, pass that on to the younger people that are listening to me, that I know that maybe there's something that I've done for them to feel like they could look up to me, and I could let them know that no matter what it is, the actions that they take, the front lines is everywhere that they are. The front lines is in the heart, it's in the mind, and how they're approaching these things. And so yeah, that's just a little bit about my thoughts on that. So thank you for asking.
Thanks, Dakota. I want to stay with you for a minute. I want to underline what you said about the front line being in the mind and in the heart. And what you've described as it's an awakening. You talked about a journey, and you have fought your way back to a sense of connection, understanding of self, history, culture, and land. What is the responsibility that comes with that knowledge, and what are the teachings that guide you in protecting land and water, but also building for future generations?
I think that it's even a greater responsibility now that I have 2 children, and I want to ensure that the work or the fight that we have to do now, and it's even circling back to what the elder was saying, the matriarch was saying, should come with a heavy blanket because of everything that was happening, right? And to make that lighter for the next generation. And now that I have children of my own, that I have to ensure that their future is safe as much as I possibly can. And the responsibility, it almost feels like it increases the more that you start to follow this path of culture, of reclamation, of going back, connecting with your spirit. And there's no way that I could see myself going back. And when I see that in younger people, and I teach younger people a lot of different things, I teach them what I know about the music industry. I teach them what I know about what we reference to warrior entrepreneurship. And giving that knowledge sharing, the resource sharing is so important, it's so crucial, because then that could pass on to the next generation. And the only ask is that they pass that on to the next generation, so we get further ahead each time. But yeah, it's a great responsibility when you start to look at the way that things are within your life, the cycles that have happened, even the situations with your family, and then you start to break those cycles. And there's this quote I was reading online, it's like, it ran in my family till it ran into me. And it's a lot of, I feel like, a lot of younger people can resonate with that, because when I talk with the youth, it's like they're one of the first people in their family to start walking on the red road, and they're young. Like some of these kids are like 18 years old and they're getting sober. And what I'm seeing is that it's happening younger and younger, and that's that ripple effect. So, you know, it's a lot, but it's an honor, you know, to be able to walk this path, to be able to do it in a good way, and feeling sometimes lost or without a compass. Then I already know that I have built that relationship with myself and the land, that I have that ability to go back into ceremonies and things that are going to make me feel connected, so then I could be my full self when I show up to these different things that I'm engaging with, and hopefully pass something that is going to be of value to others, especially young people. They take that back home, and then whether they use it now or down the line, at least I'm contributing in that way, and it's that reciprocity that I look to follow.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Sherry, a similar question to you. What are the responsibilities that you carry, and what are the teachings that guide you in this work?
I guess I was thinking, what comes to mind actually is something that Slato actually talked about like maybe a couple of years ago. You probably don't remember, but you know, the Real Estate Foundation, as the name sounds, can be conservative. And, you know, the issue that is most important is land use, which in and of itself is such a colonial term. And so it's kind of like, well, you know, we want to fund, like, support land defenders. How do we do that? And it wasn't universal. People were feeling different in different parts of the organization, as you can imagine. But you were kind of like, hey, what I really need, like what you really need to know about land defense and land defenders is right now we really need healing camps. We need a place where we can connect with the land and each other and ourselves, and like ceremony and culture keepers and healers, and to keep growing that and to keep rebuilding people, because they shouldn't have to always be on the front line every moment risking themselves in harm, and they just need respite. And it was kind of like, okay, like so you know, that's like someone giving you this like beautiful view into a world, and you're kind of like, okay, so like pass the baton and let's run with it in the funders, and that's land use, like that's what land use is. And I guess if it's okay, I just wanted to pass it over to Molly to say, like that was really a pivotal moment for me to understand like the interconnections and all of these things. And I wondered about sustaining and healing, and kind of where your thoughts have gone on this, because you guys have been on this long journey.
Yeah, I think that it's, I mean, the Healing Fund, and you know, we had that conversation. It's like, oh, we can load on more this project and do all these other things, and we're exhausted and we're burnt out, and you know, people are having internal conflicts and all of these things, because when you're defending your land, it's not just, you know, we called burnout, renamed it intergenerational battle fatigue, because you're not just fighting the CGL pipeline. You're not just fighting this one project. Like, you're carrying everything that your ancestors went through. You're carrying all of the fights that they had to fight, and all of the future fights of your future children and grandchildren, and all of that is with you the whole time. And so we actually just need to have some care for ourselves and one another. And it's not like we get to just go home at the end of the day and not be in it anymore. And so I think that was like a major thing, is that we need to be able to be on the land. And it got to a point with us that we couldn't be on the land anymore. So we had to have these healing camps, and we came out here to the Kispiox Lodge last year because we couldn't heal on our own on our land, because there was too much police activity, too much private security and surveillance, and all of the trauma that we were carrying. We had to actually go to other people's land to do that. And so that really helped us, you know, to stay grounded in the work and to be able to like keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Thank you for that. That fish smells almost done, but I want to give the last word to Was. You've described a very hands-on process for taking land back and for exercising your sovereignty on the land and in the feast hall. I want to get your final thoughts on the responsibilities that come with that sovereignty and the teachings that guide you in your protection of land and water and rebuilding your governance for future generations.
Thank God. It's, at this age, there's a lot of sleepless nights. Some of the older folks, same age as me, know what I'm talking about. We hardly sleep at night thinking about all of this. And what do we do next? There's a sense of desperation at this age. And I seen that in my father's, when he was teaching me. There was a sense of desperation that there's a time limit now that he had and now that I have. So my mindset is always, like my responsibility is how do I talk to these government pencil necks, I call them. How do I talk to these industry people? And then how do I relay that message back to them, to our members? And as you hear, the challenge is 360 all around in trying to get that message across on the perspective of what I see. Now, my teachings and my responsibilities, I'll try to separate it in a way that I think about it every day. Externally, I have these sets of people that I talk to, and like government, industry, the local rednecks, the RCMP, and I just separate all of that, and how do I communicate with them on any certain day as I go down the logging road, go back to Burns, get some supplies or whatever, and different types of engagements that I have to think about. So all of this is playing a huge number in my psychological health, and what I'm talking about is it's easy going for me the way I think in Wet'suwet'en. It's easy going for me the way my dad talked to me in our language. It's easy going for me to think my way. But when English is the main language that kind of has brought everything into my vision, I have to interpret all of that and see how I can react or reply and give the best advice that I can. And sometimes I make like any other person in the world. Sometimes I make bad advices. Sometimes I make bad decisions. But I turn back to my teachings and I say, well, that's the best I could do. Now, I've always said this in our feast hall, that our language is our connection to the land, our spirituality, and so forth. And when it comes to the language, the black letters I call it, the English language, I usually leave it to the younger people. I don't like lawyers, but I have to keep it to the lawyers and to the younger people that can actually understand this language, and they can deal with that. But I get the sense that sometimes that that people think, especially government industry, that people think that I'm stupid or something. And I get that sense, and so I have to study their language. I have to study the lawyer language. I have to study, and then I reply to them in their language, and they're kind of going, "Yeah, that's what we didn't expect to hear." But you're right, and but at the same time, I'm keeping them at bay. What I was taught as a young person, as growing up. The rules of engagement that I have, the traditional rules of engagement, is to have the person right in front of me if they want something or if they're after something, to have them right in front of me and have them explain to me what they're after. What do they want? And I know they want the minerals. I know they want this line to go through. I know they want this electricity to go through. But I read between the lines of what they call the cumulative effect, the impacts, the other projects that go along with this. And then I engage with them. And then when I engage with them, kind of like it's a double-edged sword, and our people are going, well, you're with them now. You're engaging them. And I'm going, well, if I don't engage with them, then they're just going to keep doing what they're doing. If I'm engaging with them, that doesn't mean I agree with them. So that's what I'm doing. My responsibility is to be the best possible communication that I have with them in their language, as the best I can, and then go to a certain point and then back off. That's the technique that I have. And other than that, in my teachings, and I teach the young ones, it's the same thing. Don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of them. Engage in with them. Talk their language, and then just go in there and just tell them, no, that's not right. Like we're already coming up with what they call the wall that I describe to the people that I work with, and that is just the fine letters, the fine prints that they have, and these engagements that they have. And then the free, prior, or informed consent that the young people are referring to, they're trying to push that in a certain way that, okay, if you get this one going, then it's cool. That's the way it'll work. And I'm saying, well, wait a second, no, that ain't right. So that's where I'm at with this. That's the responsibility. That's the responsibility, the red flags that I have. And at the same time, I rely on the young people on what they're saying, what kind of language they're speaking. And I wait. And so that's how I put my focus together on this. And sometimes it is frustrating. Well, most of the time it's frustrating. But at the same time, I in my teachings, it all boils down to my patience, and to keep focus on what I'm doing. That's where I'm at.
Can I add something really quick? Okay. I just wanted to share just a bit on the question real quick. I know we're going to eat salmon, but I think it's really important because one thing that I've always thought, and all of the work that I've done has been to uphold our Nuknuiten, to uphold our laws. Because if we keep upholding our laws, then we know that things will be sustainable, whatever comes from that. And I think one reminder that I always have to think about and remind myself in the work is that to be less human-centric. Our laws don't allow us to destroy other life. So our laws don't allow us to sell our land. our laws don't allow us to allow the destruction of other forms of life for money. And so when we're thinking about how we're upholding our laws, we have to be not only thinking about us and our future generations, but when we say Yinta, the word Yinta, it's not just the land, it's not just the people that live on the land, it's everything that lives on the land. And so considering that that is the truest law of the land, is that we don't have a right to destroy life, other life on the land. We don't have a right to sell it off to anybody else. We have a deep, deep responsibility, even if it means saying no over and over and over and over again, that we have to uphold and stay true to that Anaknuatan, despite everything that they will throw at us. How it's that?
Thank you for that. Thank you to our panelists. I really appreciate your patience, your translation of these concepts, and all of this hard-won experience, and for sharing that with us. So thank you again. I think we'll leave it there.
Thanks.
Thank you.